Good morning. Ooh, we got an echo. Hang on just a second. And welcome to Kansas City Oasis. My name is Julie Samuel Wisman, and I am pleased to welcome you, those here on the Zoom call, as well as those joining us on Facebook Live. Welcome to Kansas City Oasis. We feel here that the human experience is better when shared, and we are so pleased that you have chosen to share it with us this morning. For those that are new to Kansas City Oasis, we are a secular humanist community where we gather around our 5 values, which are people are more important than beliefs, meaning comes from making a difference, reality is known through reason, human hands solve human problems, and be accepting and be accepted. We're pleased to present the following lineup this morning. Our musical guest is our very own JJ Cantrell. You had the pleasure of listening to them just this last week, AJ. And again, we're really appreciative that JJ's filling in for us. We had our regularly scheduled musician was unwell this morning, so JJ's picking up the slack. Our community moment will be Terry Allen, and then our guest speaker will be Jayrod Garrett, joining us from Northern Wasatch Oasis, and you'll get to hear his introduction here in a minute. But without any further ado, let's hear from JJ. Good morning, my friends.
All right, I've got all the echo suppression in the world off, so that's probably where the echo came from.
Cool.
But it's supposed to make my guitar sound all pretty.
Awesome.
As you might imagine.
Oh. I got you muted. You got muted, Jay. Sorry.
I think your sound's okay. I think you got muted for a second.
I did.
Sorry about that. I think that was me.
I'm judging you, Julie.
Please do.
Like, the mouse is a really long way away so that I can fit everything into the webcam shot.
I won't do it again. My hand's up. Hands up.
Only time will tell. Mm-hmm. All right, so I didn't prepare anything. So I'll do my best. All right, we're going to call that improvisation number 72 to the power of pi minus 1.
Woo, big number.
All right, now I'm going to try another song that I haven't played in a while, but I have played it before. Hang on, I got to get the right lyrics. I got my eyes in the fire, got a hold in Tennessee. I got my foot in the door of that California store. Now I'm up to my ears in me. Don't be concerned if the song sounds familiar. Don't be concerned if it all seems the same. Just be concerned that your politics will kill you, and it's all just public domain. I took a bite of the Big Apple, and I dabbled in that forbidden fruit. No, they promised me points, and they slipped me skinny joints, and I've yet to see any loot from that man in the high-heeled Gucci shoes. Don't be concerned if the song sounds familiar. Don't be concerned if it all seems the same. Just be concerned that your policies will kill you. It's all just public domain. Oh my gosh, I put both the same lyrics on the same page. Oh dear God. It's too hard to adult. I sing in the Red River Valley. I've drank with whores in Santa Fe. Yeah, I ran with the snuff queens in Dallas, like I ran from Snow White in L.A. Now I've broken all my vows to demolate. Don't be concerned if the song sounds familiar. Don't be concerned if it all seems the same. Just be concerned that your politics will kill you, and it's all just public domain. It makes sense to get into the rain. Think about it, darling.
Love it. Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. So let's go ahead and move into a few announcements. First up, we have a couple of announcements regarding our Oasis Kids. As you might have seen on the private group, there is going to be some no contact drop-offs of Halloween gifts for our kids coming up this Saturday. If you haven't signed your kiddos up to receive those gifts, please make sure you get on the private group and do that, or you can contact Sarah Geelan directly if you're having trouble getting your kids signed up for that. Also, we are planning to see our kiddos in their costumes this coming Sunday. And let's be honest, it probably just won't be just our kids. It'll probably be us too. I got something in the works. So costumes, costumes this coming Sunday in advance of Halloween later the following Saturday. With that, we'll do a few birthday shout outs today. We know we were joined by Marilee Harrison last week, and it is her birthday today. And also, you know him, you love him. We marvel at his creative virtual backgrounds every week. You know, I'm talking about Kevin Phillips. It's his birthday also today. I haven't seen what his background is yet this morning, but I'm sure it's something super cool and moving typically. Also, we have David Ricks celebrating his birthday tomorrow. So reach out to these folks on Facebook, let them know you're thinking of them, or here in the chat. Wish everyone very happy birthdays. If you have any celebrations that you'd like us to mention on Sunday, please message one of the MCs, one of the board members. You can put it in the chat for the board on the Facebook private page when you get a moment. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into our community moment. So our presenter is Terry, our very own Terry Allen this morning. When I asked him for 3 words to label himself this morning, he said, "Don't like labels." Fair enough. I support that. And if you needed a warning when interacting with Terry, it would probably be, "Don't get me started about insurance companies. I hate them with a passion." And with that, we will turn it over to Terry for his community moment. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I do have a slide, so let me see if I can't get it shared here. And let me know if you can see that.
Yep.
All right. All right, there we go. So what I want to talk about is when I signed up for this back in August, it was the 15-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Most of you probably at least remember it and remember how horrendous it was. I actually spent the first 10 days of September down there as part of a disaster response team, and came back and then spent the last 10 days of September down there again as part of the disaster response team for my company, Sprint. So what I want to talk about is not what happened down there, how horrendous it was, but just a few of the stories that I remember after 15 years. If you remember when it came in, it was supposed to be bad, but we didn't really know how bad it was. And when it hit, and we already had a disaster response team ready to go, but I was on backups. But when it first hit and the levee started breaking, that was the oh shit moment when I got deployed down there. So what happened is I immediately basically jumped on a plane, flew to Houston, and grabbed a company truck and started driving on I-10 to New Orleans. And as I was driving, the team that was already on site was calling me with basically shopping lists and requests for supplies. So I was driving and stopping at Costco's, Walmart's, whatever, to pick up and filling the back of my truck up with everything needed to take care of things. We were not prepared. Nobody was prepared for what happened in New Orleans. So I was driving along, and the last stop that I made was actually at a Walmart just before I got into New Orleans. And the thing they asked for was everybody needed rubber boots. Nobody had brought them. So I went into the Walmart with a cart, went back and stripped the shelves of all their rubber boots. So I had this shopping cart filled, overflowing with rubber boots. I was walking up to check out, and this old guy stops me. He looks at me and he goes, "Son, I don't know where you're going, but I know I don't want to be there." And then walks off. Then I get to the checkout line. I'm sitting there, I'm talking to this young mother with several kids, and she was actually evacuating. And as we talked, I discovered she was evacuating from the neighborhood by the airport where I was actually going to. We have 2 data centers down there, and that was the one we were going to start on by the airport. So she was evacuating with her kids. The place was flooded, and that's where I was headed in. And then when I got to the checkout counter, I got up there and my credit card was declined. Apparently my bank realized that there was a series of charges along the I-10 corridor, and they decided that my card had been stolen. But luckily, before I left, the company had given me $10,000 in cash because they didn't know what was going to be going on down there. So I was able to pay for it. And by the way, that $10,000 rode with me for the first 10 days, and I was petrified that I was going to lose it. So I literally slept with that cash with me for those whole 10 days. It never left my body. I was petrified. Anyway, so I got and met up with the team, and our first base camp was in Hammond, which is just north of New Orleans. We have a small technical facility there next to a church. So we parked in the church parking lot. That was our camp for the first couple of nights. And that picture down on the lower left, or lower right, sorry, I'd somehow got a cot. And so that was my little camp. I had a small truck already packed with stuff. I had no room. So I set up, excuse me, in the equipment room and slept in there for 2 nights. But then, if you remember, you started hearing about all the violence and lawlessness and everything that was going on. So the company pulled us out and established us at an RV camp out in Baton Rouge. And that's the top left picture of our little RV camp. So for the next 3 days, or next 6 days was actually a blur for me. Because we couldn't be down there during the dark, we would get up before dawn, drive in the 1.5 to 2 hour drive into New Orleans because of the traffic and the blockades and everything. We would get in, start our work, and work probably till about 6, and then shut down, drive back to Baton Rouge, get back to Baton Rouge about 8, shower, eat dinner, and then the 4 of us managers that were running this operation, we'd get together till past midnight, basically planning for the next day's activities. So after 6 days, we were just totally exhausted. And one other thing I forget to mention, when we went out there, because of the security and the violence, the company had hired 40 armed security guards. So everywhere we went, we had an armed guard with us. Those 6 days, the one thing that I really remember is that 6th day, I was so exhausted that as I was working that 6th day, I could not sit down. I had to walk around all day, else I would have fallen asleep. Then the next 2 days, because things were kind of running well, we decided, myself and one of my peer managers, a couple others, decided we were going to do some reconnaissance. So the first day was on the ground, and 5 of us hopped in a Humvee. And if any of you have ever been in a Humvee, you'll know that a Humvee has exactly 4 seats. So as the shortest or smallest of this group of 5, I got to ride in the cargo compartment of this Humvee all day as we toured around. So we went around New Orleans, went downtown for the first time, drove by the convention center, Superdome, just drove around checking out various areas that we wanted to see and check on. And one of the areas we stopped at was the second data center that we had down there, which I'll talk about in a minute. Then the second day, I volunteered and got on the helicopter reconnaissance team. So I spent the day flying around, getting over areas that we couldn't get to over the land, trying to assess damage to our network. The second data facility was one of our larger ones. It was down by the 9th Ward. It was flooded. And in fact, water didn't get out of there until probably later, 3 weeks afterwards when it happened. So when we did our reconnaissance, that one picture was my view. We got on I-10, and this was the closest we could get to it. And that was in my first 10 days. Now, one thing that happened here when the storm hit, we actually had an employee decide to ride the storm out in this facility with his son and his dog. But he was on the phone with us describing the flooding, describing how the first floor started flooding, and he had to move up to the second floor. And by the end of that first day, or toward the beginning of the second day, his battery died on his cell phone, and so we lost contact with him. We had no idea what happened with him. So the second day we tried to get in through the roads and couldn't. Third day, we hired a helicopter. We had a helicopter land on the roof and go in to rescue this fella and his son and his dog, but he was gone. We had no idea where he was at. We found his little camp he'd set up in the stairwell, but that was it. We didn't know what happened with him. And then 2 days later, we eventually heard from him. He was able to call in and said that just a couple hours before the helicopter actually got there, he had waved down a passing boat who had rescued him, taken him to dry land. He'd somehow made it to a refugee camp out in Baton Rouge. It took 2 days for him to get out there and get a phone, and was able to call us. So we had lost him for probably about 4 days, no idea where he was. So that was pretty worrying for us. And to kind of wrap up this part, when I came back for the second time, the water had finally gotten away, so we could get to it eventually. We hired a hazmat team to go in to check it out first. They said it was safe, and so I was the first one in. And if you can see the picture on the lower right hand, that was my first, when I first walked in. You can see the water line was for 3 weeks. The thing that really struck me was the smell. The smell was absolutely horrendous. It was just the worst thing I've ever smelled in my life. So we have actually ended up abandoning that building because it was so damaged. So one of the things that's kind of important to me is, my 38 years with Sprint, the September of 2005 is probably one of my biggest accomplishments. I feel I'm proudest of it. And one of the reasons is back on the first night or second night, we were sitting around in Hammond eating, and the sheriff's deputy drove up and started talking to us. You could tell he was exhausted. He said that he'd been on duty for 72 hours. He just was eating snack food. His patrol car was almost out of gas. But most importantly, he is saying that his wife worked as a nurse in one of the hospitals downtown New Orleans, and he had lost contact with her 48 hours. So he had no idea what had happened. And remember, at this time, the violence was escalating. Nobody knew what was going downtown, except that everything was flooding. People were dying. So this poor fella, he actually broke down and started crying and sobbing in front of us. So, and this was a big dude, so you could tell. So there wasn't much we could do. Obviously, we fed him. We had portable fuel tankers with us, so we filled up his patrol car, and then he took off. But that really made an impact on me, that I was able to spend September down there trying to get communications back for the folks down there. So, and then the last thing that I got out of this was the picture on the right. That I hate pictures of myself, and that is probably one of the only pictures of me that I actually kind of like. So those are my two accomplishments for September of 2005 in Katrina. And that's all I got.
Hey, Terry.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about all the devices that you have in the picture that you said you liked of yourself? Tell me about what all you have in your hands there.
Oh, those are the devices that we had to use for communications. We had a satellite phone. I had my personal phone. We had a Nextel walkie-talkie. We had a regular walkie-talkie. I think that's it. Between those four devices, that's what we had to use to talk for probably the first 2-3 weeks, depending on where you're at, which one you could use. And some of them, none of them worked. Some areas, none of them worked. Mm-hmm. So, yes.
Cool. So yeah, I think there's still probably places that never recovered from that.
I went down for a mission trip a couple of years later, mm-hmm. back in the day, and it was still horrendous. I haven't been down in New Orleans in quite a few years, but there's some areas that's still in very bad shape down there. So anyway.
Well, we really appreciate you sharing that part of your journey with us. That was a fascinating story, and yeah, I'm sure nerve-wracking, sleepless nights.
Yes, it was.
Unforgettable part of your life. So thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay. So at this point, we would like to encourage any of the rest of you that can hear my voice, whether you're on Zoom here with us or on Facebook Live, if you would like to share your story with us, then we would love to hear that. If you can take a few minutes, reach out to Mark Dixon, who schedules our community moments. He's scheduling into November at this point. So if you have something you'd like to share, I'm sure that he would be happy to get you on the schedule, and we could could hear part of your journey, your story from you. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go to our coffee break section. With that, we'll go into our breakout rooms. So you'll be in a smaller room with a handful of other folks that are on the call this morning. Get a chat, catch up, see how things are going, see if everyone's braced for this chilly turn in the weather. I, for one, am not. However, we'll get a chat a little bit about that, and I will see you all back here in about 10 minutes. And this is a reminder too, if you stay in the main room, just to make sure that you're muted, please.
Julie, did you get your hair done? It looks amazing. I think you're still muted.
Yes, I have freshly bobbed hair this week. Thanks for noticing, Nathan.
Mhm. It looks fantastic.
Well, thank you. Okay, so we are back in the main room here. I'm gonna take off my background real quick. And we're going to welcome back for his second performance. Their second performance, sorry, our very own JJ Cantrell. JJ, are you ready to roll? I'm not seeing you right this second.
I don't know what to tell you.
I don't either.
I see me.
Good.
I mean, even on the video screen.
Okay. Here we go.
Hey.
There we go. Technology. All right. Please take
I
away.
mean, I was half expecting to be muted again. All right, as is tradition, here's a song that I've never really played before. I kind of played through like the first verse of it during sound check, but literally that was the first time. Good luck.
Excited. Good luck.
Doc Ellis didn't think he was pitching that day back in 1970 when he and his wife took a trip to the ballpark a little bit differently. So by the time he hit the bullpen, half the world melted away. That's about time Coach Murtaugh came and said, "Doc, you're pitching today." Taking the mound, the ground turned into the icing on a birthday cake. The leadoff man came up and turned into a dancing rattlesnake. The crowd tracked back and forth in waves of color underneath the sun. The ball turned into a silver bullet, his arm into a gun. I took a look all around the world. I finally discovered you can't judge a book. Three up, three down for 3 straight innings in a 0-0 tie. As all them batters' names come ringing from a voice out of the sky. Hallucinating Halloween scenes with each new swing of the bat. The sinker looked like it was falling off the table, but nobody was hallucinating that. I took a look all around the world one time and I finally discovered you can't judge a book. By the top of the 7th, he was up 1-0, giving them Padres fits. By the bottom of the 8th, he was up 2-0, and they still hadn't got any hits. With 1 out to go, left in the game, the batter looked like a baby child. The birthday cake was shaking, them waves of color was growing wild. By the last time that he mowed the last man down, he was high as he'd ever been. Looking to the sounds of the world going round, completely unaware of the wind. And while the papers would say he was scattered that day, he was pretty as a pitcher could be. The day Doc Ellis of the Pittsburgh Pirates threw a no-hitter on LSD. I took a look all around this world one time to discover you can't judge a book.
All right. That is a song I've never heard before. Coincidentally, however, I just listened to a podcast about an era of the Pirates where they were all coked up all the time. So I was kind of like, once you got around there, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I do know where we're going. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, fun. Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker. Jayrod P. Garrett longs for a world that sees each of us as human beings. As part of the Black Lives Matter movement, he lost friends and some he considered family for the cause. Every sacrifice, however, has made him stronger. His goal as a writer and performer is to share art that moves us as people away from the caricatures that our biases and systems determine others to be, and onward to a place where we see each human being for all of who they are. His collection of poems called Being Black in a White Space is the inspiration for this project. He is a poet and aspiring author that graduated from Weber State with his Bachelor of English with an emphasis on creative writing in 2014. An Ogdenite at heart, he currently teaches at Da Vinci Academy of Science and the Arts, and he lives with his wife and 2 kids in Bountiful, Utah. And then we'll talk a little bit about Jayrod's Oasis connection. He also serves as the youth coordinator at the Northern Wasatch Oasis, which he describes as being basically sitting in a room playing D&D focused on Oasis values. And he also serves as a member of the Oasis Network Board of Directors. So without any further ado, let's please give a warm virtual KC Oasis welcome to Jayrod Garrett.
I see all the spirit fingers. It's wonderful. Good morning, folks. So as you may have caught, like, I am an activist by nature, so you're going to hear some of that in what I am doing. Don't worry, this is not all going to be like, oh, look, you should care about other people. Well, okay, that part's not true. It's totally going to be, you should care about other people, because that's kind of just the point of life, caring about other people. We're here to help each other out, regardless of what background you come from. That's just true. But today, I'm going to be sharing with you something near and dear to my heart from a lot of family studies work I did. So my major in college was in child and family, my major was in English. My minor was in child and family studies. I took that as a minor, which I would have really liked to have taken as a major, because I wanted to be a good father. However, I've learned over the years that a lot of things that have a tendency to fall in line with being a good parent also fall in line with having good relationships, and also fall in line with good leadership practices. So all of what I'm sharing with you here today has to do with all of that. The first thing, and note, you're going to hear me name drop like constantly, specifically because of the fact that I am not the expert on any of these subjects. That you can read their works. I'm going to probably tell you not only the name of the person who did something, but I'm also going to tell you where you can find more of that, okay? So without further ado, let's talk about the anatomy of trust, okay? So when we're talking about trust, we need to help you get some building blocks. Like, I was like, trust is like this huge loaded term, and people are like, trust, and it becomes really hard to understand what it is. Brene Brown, who I love and adore, she talks a lot about trust in her work. But in my studies, I also always connected it specifically to the work of also John Gottman. He talks about relationships and what successful relationships need to survive, okay? One of the things he mentions specifically is emotional bids. Now, emotional bids take place in all relationships, they are literally you seeking attention from someone else. And note, this is not a bad thing. You actually get to seek attention from other people. Why? Because you're important just like they are. Yay! Specifically, what an emotional bid is a request for someone to be present in your life. It is not saying you have to do everything with me all of the time. It is a request to have someone be present in your life. And that can be like when you see your buddy on the street, you see him and you're like, oh, hey, you go together and you do your handshake. My ex-wife and I have a handshake. It's awesome. And to people who are not familiar with it, they're like, you are the weirdest divorced couple we've ever met. And we are. So and emotional bids are important specifically because this is how you build relationships. When you make a bid and the other person responds to it, that's known as turning towards a bid. And it's super helpful, like being able to be like, for example, last night, I had a little moment when I yelled at my kids. They've been asked to do the dishes twice. And I was like, okay, you all have to stop doing whatever you're doing now and do the dishes. Interestingly enough, when you ask your kids to do chores, that's actually a bid for them to be present in the household. That's really important. They have to feel like they are doing something that they're giving back to the household, because otherwise they just keep taking and taking and taking, and they don't really understand that there's a relationship there. After that, and I cooked dinner while they were washing dishes and we were having conversation and everything. And then I was like, hey, we should watch a movie together afterwards. Which everyone like sat down in the living room and we watched and we talked about it afterwards. And it was just this long string of me asking for an emotional bid for the household, me asking for an emotional bid for me performing emotional work. Like the bid was, we're hungry. My wife actually started this entire thing with putting out a bid of, I'm hungry. When are you going to cook dinner? Each one of those successfully evolved into being something where we had a clean kitchen, a good dinner, and we got to watch something together as a family, which doesn't happen as often as it should these days. And it was a really nice night. Now, the reason why I bring all of these up, and it's all that sounds like it's super, super simple. When we're talking trust, those super simple moments are the moments when we build trust with others. It's not built in the big grandiose things. Typically, it usually comes in small moments. Now, when we're talking about trust, I like to lean on the words of Dr. Charles Feltman. Brene Brown will mention him if you happen to watch the video I'm going to suggest later on. And Dr. Charles Feldman says that trust is choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else. I'll repeat that again. Trust is choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to actions of someone else. I think that's a really important thing to define what trust is, because that's the definition of trust. Because sometimes we just like, well, isn't that thing where you decide that you're going to allow someone to be like, you trust them because I can't even wrap words around trust without like thinking of that definition. I think that's the way it is for a lot of us. Like, if someone didn't give you some sort of definition for it, could you wrap your brain around it? Or do you just go with innately, well, I know what trust is when I feel it? Because I think we go a lot that way a lot, but having concrete language around it and having it defined for us does a beautiful thing where now we can share what trust is with other people. Now, Brene Brown, she talks a lot in her work about like how she learned about trust and all that kind of stuff. She'll talk about a marble jar. We won't talk about all that because I want her stories to be her stories, my stories to be my stories. One of the so less than a year ago, back say I'd say January through like June, I was working for Verizon Wireless, and I was working in a call center at Verizon Wireless. And one of the things I was trying to do was I was trying to get a promotion at work. And I also realized, so I was working in a call center. And if you've worked in a call center, you know, call centers are not particularly nice places to be. Like, you'll have the person who calls and is like super cheerful and nice the entire conversation. You're like, yes, more of these people, please. They actually like want me to have a good day. But you also get the people who are like, look, you beep, being beep, son of a beep. I really hope that you are able to get this beeping fixed because I am beeping tired of all of the beep that you are giving me. And this is the opening of the conversation. They didn't actually tell you what was wrong. They cussed you out first before they even told you what was wrong. I have especially a few of these stories because I worked on the team that dealt with escalated calls. And escalated calls almost always were someone who started that way and they got transferred to you immediately after they did that. So a lot of my work in that space was around, I have about 30 seconds in which I have to gain their trust. Otherwise, they're just going to attack me over this. Ooh, we have someone in the chat who's mentioning something. It says, how do you shift the notion of do your chores from how you have to contribute to something like that you are giving as part of our family relationship? I'm having a tough time phrasing this, but the motivation for my question is, chores often feel like an obligation for kids. Yeah, they note, I'm not saying chores shouldn't feel like an obligation, but you can enjoy your obligations. Like, you're obligated to feed your children. You're obligated to make certain they have a roof over their head. Why not make that fun? Like, seriously, who likes to live in a house that's like dark all the time and everyone's walking around saying, you're dead, bring out your dead, and then you like lay your children on a little rack and it's like, all right, they're dead. The only things they do all day are play video games, and occasionally they come up to snack on something, and then we have dinner and like they spend their entire time during dinner on their phones. For all intents and purposes in this household, they're dead. And you give them off to that person, they cart them away, and you hope that they're able to learn. You hope that that other person that you carted them away to will help them learn something. This is the process of sending your children to school. That's typically what we do. I know this one because I left my job at Verizon about 2 months ago to become a language arts instructor at a local school. I get to see this on a regular basis. I know not only I have done it, I also see it done. So when we're talking about this idea of emotional bids, keep in mind, bids are meant to be meaningful. If you're struggling having your kids choose to be part of the household, try and find ways to make it fun. Try and find ways to make it meaningful. Like, I listened to my kids bicker last night about dishes like the entire time. That does not seem like it's fun. But we're talking. We're talking about our lives. We're talking about what things are going on, and we're trying to make the best of it. John Gottman, relationship master. He'll talk about the idea of learning from the relationship masters rather than the relationship disasters. Emotional bids are a big part of that. Gottman's research is a lot in specifically marriages. He'll talk about like how 86% of marriages that are successful, marriages that are successful, 86% of them will like do bids. They'll respond with well to bids, with turning towards a bid. The ones who don't do so well only turn towards each other 33% of the time, which means they spend the other part of their time doing the other things, such as they turn away from bids. And you can't turn towards all bids. You cannot. You sometimes have to turn away from them to have time for yourself, to be able to do other things in your life. You cannot say yes to everyone, because in order to say yes to this person over here, you have to say no to others. That's another idea that comes from specifically the woman named Shonda Rhimes. No, it's not Shonda Rhimes. I'm blanking. Shonda. Is it? Nope, it is Shonda Rhimes. Yes. So you may know her as this woman who like puts together shows on television, such as like Grey's Anatomy. I think she did another show by name of Revenge. She's pretty famous. It's interesting. You learn more about her. She was really shy and didn't do a lot. She wrote this book called A Year of Yes. Amazing book. You should read it. Anyway, the ideas specifically really important about you cannot say yes to everything. You have to choose what you say yes to. And if you spend your time saying no to all the things that allow you to connect with other people, guess what you don't have in your life? Other people. She had done that with her life, and the Year of Yes is the journey of her learning how to say yes to many of the things that she used to say no to. A lot of these things I've learned over the years also come with the added benefit of I get to use them in my family. 2015, I was in a place where a very unique place. My ex-wife and I still lived together at that time. We were technically separated. We didn't sleep in the same bed. And we had this work to do of learning how to live in the same household together without the kind of intimate relationship we were used to. Okay? Because the romantic relationship wasn't working. Just wasn't. So we had to navigate this new ground of like, what do we want our relationship to be? Which is something I recommend for anyone who has to go through the wasteland that is known as divorce. It doesn't have to be all bad. Over the course of that year, it was like from a May to a May. Well, probably more like June or July to May, we started doing things that still made us family, such as watching shows together, such as having conversations about things. We moved away from things that were about an intimate relationship, such as sex, such as hand holding, such as going on dates. And we focused a lot more on our friendship, because dating is a different thing than a friendship is. So the two people go out, your goal when you're friends is just to spend time together, not to like have that lead to any place romantic. So we did that a lot. She started, for the first time in our our relationship at that point, she never came to anything where I read poetry or anything like that. She started coming to things of her own accord because she wanted to. And note, she didn't just come and hang out there. She made friends that were entirely separate from what I was doing while there. Interestingly enough, she still goes to that event because she made friends, and I do not. But it was just these little things of showing up, of choosing to show up more for her in her life. And at the end of the year, we're more like siblings rather than husband and wife. She was able to like happily allow me to move on with my life and date and everything. And ultimately, it's not the big things that count, but the little things. Though sometimes they sound pretty big. Like several months later, I had moved out. I was on my own and everything had fallen apart. I tried going to grad school. That didn't work out. I had a little place of my own while I was in grad school. I lost my job. And as a result of losing my job, eventually the money runs out. And I was depressed and like a failure in grad school. And she came over and sat with me while I cried on the floor because I couldn't put things into a box anymore. And so she put things into a box, and I went back to live at her home for, I think, like 6 months before I was able to get into another arrangement. Probably closer to 8. But our relationships are built in those small moments. She knew I was having a hard time. She chose to come over. She chose to comfort me. She didn't comfort me by being like, hey, everything's going to be all right. She comforted me by, hey, I know this is hard and you're in pain and it's okay. But I recognize you also have this other thing to do. I'm going to put things in the box. And then we're going to take the boxes and we're going to put them in my car and we're going to go to my house. And you're going to stay there until you get your feet underneath you again. I share these with you as these are the building blocks. These are bids that were heard, turned towards, and they made the relationship stronger. Dr. Feltman talks about specifically what distrust is as well. So if trust is choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else, distrust is what I have shared with you that is important to me is not safe with you. And I think that difference is a really important one to understand. You have to know what both trust and distrust looks like. Distrust is going to look like, hey, you are downstairs playing video games and you hear in the kitchen crash. Distrust looks like, instead of going upstairs because you didn't hear a scream, you continue to play your video game. You will hear about it later. People typically let you know when you rejected a bid. If the important part about that is, the hard part about that is bids aren't like super knock you over the head thing, because you didn't go upstairs when you heard the thing crash in the kitchen. That's nonverbal. That's not even something really that you might not even think is a bid. But I've been on the side of when I stayed downstairs when that happened, playing a game, and on the side of running up the stairs and saying what happened. There is a relief that you see in the other person's face. I've seen it in my wife's face multiple times when I run up and I ask what's wrong. She may even be perturbed and be like, nothing's wrong. I just was loud up here. I was cutting up something for dinner. But she's relieved because she knows you're going to respond this way if she does need you. Okay? When I didn't go upstairs, I heard about it, that people typically let you know because if they care about you, if you missed a bid and you should have really been there. Pay attention to those. Those are also known as bids. Those are bigger ones because you're trying to repair damage that may have taken place because you didn't respond to something earlier. Okay? Now, the big reason why I share all of it is to get into what Brene Brown calls braving. Okay? Because understanding like bids and trust and the relationship there, that's one part of this. But trust itself is such a bigger concept. You have to think about like much more about how you not only do we respond to bids, but also there's an interesting thing here. You have a relationship of trust with other people, but the most important relationship of trust you have in your life is the relationship you have with yourself. The most important relationship of trust in your life is the relationship you have with yourself. So Brene breaks it down with the concept of what she calls the marble jar. A concept she calls braving. Apologize, getting concepts mixed up. Braving is an acronym that stands for 7 things. I'm going to try and send these out to you some way at the end of the meeting. Julie will probably help me with that. The first one of those is B in braving. B stands for boundaries. You respect my boundaries, and when you're not clear about what's okay and not okay, you ask. You're willing to say no. Okay, this is important. If you do not have boundaries, you cannot have trust. Like, in one of the communities I am in right now, there is a lot of grief going on because a man just recently committed suicide. And everyone loved this person that like I knew. They're all like, they're really great. They're really such a good person. I thought this, and then I found out that then in the wake of their death, many of us found out the reason that they committed suicide was because they couldn't deal with the harm that they put into the world by through the molestation of children. there's been a lot of work and boundaries in this community as this news has come through. Because we were having to grapple with the fact that this person we thought we knew, we didn't really know. And you might think this story is about the person who did the horrible things. It's not. It's about the community and what that meant for them, because we had to have boundaries around what we could and could not do for each other. One, a boundary that was really quickly raised is we do not get to invalidate any woman's experience that says that they were harmed by this person. That was a really quick boundary that came up in the community. Like, you had to trust women. Women were more important than his memory. Another boundary that really quickly came up in the community was honesty and talking about how you felt. You had to be allowed to speak about how you felt. Honestly, there was not going to be any censorship of what you said. If you were like, he is an evil human being and I'm glad he's dead, that was valid and what was accepted. If someone else came along and said, this person was very valuable to me, they helped me out at X, Y, and Z times in my life, I am devastated by this loss, and I am double devastated by the fact that they also were this other identity that I had no idea existed. That was valid too. That work of those types of boundaries in the community is allowing people to heal. Those boundaries also create a great deal of trust between all the members of the group, because if you can share that openly and you can know that your story is going to be heard, everyone is turning towards to them and is responding to the bids they're making for healing. A very important part of boundaries is being willing to say no. As I mentioned earlier, you cannot say yes to something over here without saying no to another thing over here. But for example, by saying yes to being here this morning, I don't get to go to my own oasis this morning because I'm not capable of being in two places at once. This most commonly happens in my classroom. If I say yes to spending time with my family, that's at the cost for a first-year teacher of having lesson plans and materials ready for my classroom. Because as a first-year teacher, you literally have nothing, and you have to build all of it on your own time. It's just how life is. But all of those things come at a cost, so you have to recognize what your boundaries are. When I have a little bit more experience and understanding as a teacher, I get to say no to my work as a teacher encroaching on my personal time. But I'm not in that space yet. People are complicated. I blame the universe as well. I also blame a non-existent God. Sometimes I blame the puppy that lives down the street. Mostly I blame things that have nothing to do with what's actually going on, because blame is just me letting go of both pain and anguish I am feeling to put it on something else. It's not holding anything responsible. That's another Brene Brown thing. All right, so we got B. R is reliability. You do what you say you'll do. At work, this means staying aware of your competencies and limitations so you don't overpromise and are able to deliver on commitments and balance competing priorities. This applies more than just to work. This applies to your relationships with your friends. It It applies to positions of power that you are in where you're leading people. It applies to your intimate relationships. It applies to all of that. So, and there's a difference between like validating things and being reliable. Okay. For example, at this point in time, I may weigh a little bit more than what I would like to. If I had a scale that would tell me that I weighed 200 pounds, that would be a very valid scale for me. It would validate me. It would make me feel good. Would it be accurate? No, it doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to make me feel good. Reliable is something different. Reliable is going to do several things. One, it's going to have accuracy. It's going to repeatedly tell me the same message when it gets the specific data, such as I step on scale. Oh, look, this scale tells me that I weighed 245 pounds. Does it tell me that once? No, it tells me that every time I get on it. Now, this is a scale that while it may be valuable to me, I also want to huck it across the room because just because I'm a man, there's the thing of I have body issues too. I realize I've eaten up a lot of my time. I'm going to try and get through the rest of this quickly. I apologize. There's another thing. So reliability is about being not going over. Next thing is accountability. You have to own your mistakes, apologize, and make amends. This is a big part of this is, and you also have to make space for others to do the same thing. If you can't be accountable without holding other people accountable, which is incredibly important. One of the biggest things in my marriage was when she said, when it wasn't working, I owned my mistakes and I made amends. The amends I made was rebuilding the relationship differently. It made everything better. Vault, which is V, is you don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. In all reality, a really important thing to understand is if you violate trust with someone else, you violated trust with everyone you know. Okay? For example, you all know that person who, at work who is the screw up. Okay? But not only they don't always want their business out there. Well, they go make a mistake. That mistake's not known by anyone but you. You have a choice of you can help them out and try and make it better, or you could go and tell everyone that they made that mistake. Problem with that, when you go and tell everyone that they made that mistake, one, they are well aware of the fact that instead of helping them, you chose to hurt them. And they know also you'll do the same thing to them. When you break trust over here with this person, you're going to break it not just with them, but with a community. I had the 3-minute warning come up just a minute ago. I apologize for moving through this a little quickly, but it's all important, as was the bid stuff earlier. There's just not enough time in the world to do all the things. Next on this list is an idea called integrity. Brene Brown explains integrity as specifically being this. You choose courage over comfort. You choose what is right over what is fun, easy, fast, or easy. And you choose to practice your values rather than simply professing them. This is probably the hardest part of trust, but the word integrity is also talks about strength. The strength of a building is judged by its structural integrity. So integrity is where all of these things come together. Because the thing that's fun, fast, and easy is totally talking about that guy, because that guy's a screw up. He deserves to be talked about. He deserves your ridicule and the humiliation that you get to dish out to him. Or does he? And you say that you're a loving, kind, and giving person. Those things don't sound loving, kind, or giving. You have to examine each action you take in your life with that kind of a microscope to make certain that you are in line with your own values. N is non-judgment. I can ask for what I need, and you can ask for what you need. For example, I need 2 more minutes. I am begging Julie for 2 more minutes to get through all this, because I know you are all on a schedule. And while I apologize about running over, I do not apologize for what I am sharing, because it is important. But you have to be able to ask for what you need and ask for help and accept help. I came from a long line of helpers. Like, we go out, we help all the people, we do all the things, and we don't ask anyone for help. In my family, that was the role I played. I was the rock. I supported everyone else. And then my life fell apart. And I needed help putting things into a box. And I needed a place to live. And I needed help figuring out my budget and everything. My life literally fell apart. I learned a lot in that time about what the value of asking for others for help and the meaningful way that built relationships. As a result of like that, I know my ex-wife and I are going to be friends for life because of what we went through in that. Because I made a choice to make certain she had a house to live in. I didn't, like, in the divorce, I want the house. I said, you need a house, you need this place to live, it's yours. I was walk out. I later lived in that house that I had given her. And she enabled me to be able to survive. Small things. That might sound a little big, but that's really a small thing. Last of these is generosity. You extend the most generous interpretation possible to the intentions, words, and actions of others. I suck at this. I suck at this, and I suck at this. It is by far the hardest of all the things to do to build trust. Because I like most people. I'm like, I see someone do something. For example, screw up guy screwed up again. I'm like, he just did it because he's inept at his job. But maybe it's because he just actually doesn't know what to do and is afraid to ask for help. And his mistakes are bids for you to help him, because putting bids out in the world is vulnerable in the first place. He doesn't know who to trust because all of the people around him ridicule him. So if you simply take that step to be generous and say, he needs help, I'm going to go help him. And you watch him be able to change and transform. One last story about that. I spent 15 years in the Utah Army National Guard, okay? There was one gentleman who was in my unit who literally everyone hated. They were like literally waiting for the day that his enlistment would end so they could kick him out. He was a commo guy in my section, okay? And just no one in our unit had any confidence in his abilities at all. We got deployed. When we got deployed, he was moved out of the headquarters unit and put into one of the line batteries to do communications for them. And they trusted him. and they believed that he could do a good job. And he transformed. He went from being someone who was incompetent and not capable of things to earning the trust of every single person we worked with. Everyone in our home unit had to say he was amazing. And he got back from that deployment and got promoted. Trusting people changes their lives and changes the narratives by which they live. The better you can do at trusting others, the better your life will be. But all of these things turn back into you have to trust yourself first. All these principles apply to being able to trust yourself. And with that, I will end. Thank you so much for your time here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jayrod. We really appreciate you coming and working through these things with us. And you know, especially I think we appreciate your very personal perspective on trust and distrust and being vulnerable with us. That's something we really focus, me personally here at Kansas City Oasis, of encouraging people to show that vulnerability. And we appreciate you bringing us the concepts of bids for attention, choosing to show up for people, and this concept of braving that we've posted here in the chat for people to review further. So thank you so much, and give our love to everyone there in the Oasis families out in Utah.
Thank you.
You know, it's a struggle for everybody right now with COVID, so we, you know, give everybody our best wishes there.
Will do. Thank you so much. Tremendously appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I will just briefly mention that if you want to learn more about the Oasis Network, you can go to oasisnetwork.com. There are currently 12 chapters of Oases across the US and Canada. And so we have a question here, Jayrod, would you be willing to stay on once we
Sure,
wrap?
no problem. I had planned on that.
Great, thank you so much. With that, I will just briefly sum up that Kansas City Oasis is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're entirely volunteer staffed and donation funded. And the program that you've enjoyed today is just a wide range of the informational, educational, and motivational speakers that we have here every Sunday. So if you have appreciated what you've seen and heard, please consider making a donation. Probably the easiest way to do that is to go to the website over here, kcoasis.org, and click on donate. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to Jay for their final performance this morning.
That was a really, really personal and raw talk. Thank you.
No problem.
So I'll do a song about one of my exes. She's pretty tired from the moments waiting patiently for me, always circling the coda. Mostly bored with wood and dirty, mostly worked down to her bones. For the mind she makes up ways, while the world and I just tarry. It could be true that I am not fairly all together now. All the king's horses drag me down, but all the man in me lets lift up my eyes. She's tearing down my walls, if only 'cause she hates to watch me slowly fall. Slowly my heart heals as she holds me. She holds me. She's patient with my silly games, rules changing every time. A new paradigm defines me. I'm like a ship without a rudder. I've no sense to steer my I just tarry. It's true that I'm not fair, yeah. All together now, all the king's horses drag me down. But all the man in me lets it lift up my eyes. She's tearing down my walls, if only 'cause she hates to watch me slowly fall. Slowly my heart heals as she holds me. She holds me. She's giving me another smile. I'm glad she's given me this while. It's not at all that I'm not grateful. It's also new to me right now. This group of goals and souls, we go and go and go and melt and float downhill, while the world and I just tarry. It could be true that I'm not fair. All together now, all together now. Yeah! All the king's horses drag me down, down. All together now, all together now. Yeah! All the king's horses drag me down. Pretty laying on her side, holding our lamb to her heart, letting me dream out like a lion. It's a little time, a little hope, a little while to wait and see, a little freedom from just trying.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate you. All right. So just one more announcement. As you might have seen on the private page, we are also calling for more MCs or hosts for our Sunday gathering. If you would like to take my place on Sunday, I would be super grateful. We're down a few in our ranks of MCs. So if anyone is interested in doing it, you could try it out for a week. No obligation, and just see if it is a good fit for you. Again, that information on that is on the private page if you'd like to join the ranks of MCs. So with that, I'd like to thank all of our presenters. I'd like to thank JJ for filling in for us at the last minute, Terry Allen for our community moment, and Jayrod for joining us from Utah this morning and sharing a lot of personal reflection and stories with us. So we really appreciate that. Throughout the week, just a reminder, we have a coffee talk at 7:30 a.m. every morning and Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Also, community group on the same Zoom link if you want to join those. We also have community groups that are ongoing, so you can get plugged into those if you have any questions. Again, reach out to anyone on the board. And with that, Kansas City, stay warm. It's going to be a chilly week. Stay well. Do what you can to stay in touch with your community. So this week, I'm going to issue a challenge to each of us to reach out to someone who maybe you haven't talked in a while. Show them your heart, show them your vulnerability, reach out, tell them how you're doing, ask how they're doing. And with that, until next week, my name is Julie Samuel Wisman. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.